Episode 5. To Have a Legacy. Against Pierre's better judgment, walking through the quieter parts of London and to the small park near his home had become a daily activity. At first he had thought Maka would, after his initial tour of the area, be able to go on as many walks as she liked by herself, but that had proved not to be the case. It was far from a question of security. Pierre had full confidence that even without her sword, Maka's magical abilities and sheer skill in hand-to-hand combat would be more than enough to protect herself from any potential mugger or would-be murderer prowling the city streets. No, instead, every day the girl would find some new reason to drag Pierre along. And for his part, Pierre found he didn't really require all that much convincing. And so flew past the days into the better part of a week, since Maka had suddenly appeared through the portal of blinding white light in his humble study. Today, Maka's excuse had been wanting to see the city in dusklight, and so the two had set out a bit later in the day. This combined with the seasons beginning to change, and it was much warmer outside, and the young woman took a great interest in all the new plants beginning to think about sprouting, or the trees reclaiming their fallen leaves. When Maka's overt eagerness finally started to settle, they chose to sit on one of the park benches they seemed always to pass by, in order to give Pierre a breather. The one with the gravel track around its circumference, the green where the children now played football in the early evening light, and where the grey chip van that seemed to have permanent residence in the place was. The bench they chose was on one side of the food van. To its far side was another bench where two teenagers, a boy and a girl, sat speaking, but far enough away that they could not be overheard. Pierre liked to make sure that people were not listening to his and Maka's bizarre conversations. For her part, Maka sat contentedly eating from a brown paper bag of chips they had bought from the van. Pierre had been glad that for all her odd similarities, Maka did not eat like an anime character. He'd seen some clips of the so-called waifu eating, and quite bluntly, the strange way they took small bites of food before smiling in pleasure downright creeped Pierre. Indeed, he was glad Maka ate food like a normal person. He himself had opted against getting anything, somewhat concerned that his diet had been compromised by his time with Maka. She herself did not seem to share this worry. "So, listen, I've been reading your book, and I have questions," Maka said in between mouthfuls. "I'm on the fourth arc." "The fourth? Are you skim-reading or something, woman?" Pierre asked in true surprise. He had been against Maka even looking at the thing till just a couple of days ago. Maka finished eating for a moment. "I've always been a fast reader, my dear man. You can put that down to your engaging prose." She smiled sweetly. "Engaging prose, my arse. You shouldn't even be able to speak English, never mind binge-reading it." "Anyway, my question is in regards to our current circumstances. To be clear, roughly 30 years ago, you were taken from our world and, isekai'd to this world, yes?" Pierre nodded his agreement. "Then, almost 2 years ago, 28 since your arrival, the Earth researchers discovered a way to look back into our world, which they dub undercurrent, in much the same way one might look through a neighbour's house's window." "Odd analogy, but yes, I suppose," Pierre said with another nod. Maka smiled in self-gratification as she continued on. "To your horror, you looked through this window, only to see the world had advanced thousands of years since your departure, to a point where the horseless carriages of this world seem like nothing. Now your home is packed with metal boats that fly through not just the sky, but space, and humanity rides atop giants that give battle against one another in the very heavens themselves. So I ask you, Pierre, my dear fellow, could it be that you not only travelled through space, but also time, to the future above Earth and the undercurrent, yes?" Pierre sighed. He had contemplated thoughts like these for years now, but it was certainly strange hearing them coming from another person. "And I take what you're getting at is that if I was randomly transported to time and space from one place to another, then you could have had the same happen too. That about it?" Maka took this as her turn to nod in confirmation. "Exactly. If time and the place are randomly picked, then that would explain why I arrived here 30 years after you did, but know less about my history than you do. Like when we met, you claimed I was Empress of the world. Yet in my time, I'm only the heir of a small nation. See?" Pierre massaged his forehead patiently. "Yes, but that's exactly it, isn't it? When I left you, you were already on your merry way to conquering the known world. So how can you be here now before you've done that? The version of me you claim to have left behind, by all rights, still must end up here, Ergo, he needs to have the same memories as me, or it becomes some sort of paradox. Ha ha, my dear Pierre, perhaps not. Imagine, if you will, that I disappear into this world, spend some time with your current you, and then return again. As long as I don't tell anyone what happened, what's to say they would know any different? Then I could still become the Empress, and younger you could still get sent here. Pierre frowned as he turned this idea over in his head. I suppose, were it not for other inconsistencies in your appearance, that might, theoretically at least, be possible. However, I doubt it. And why is that? Maka returned indignantly. Look down the pathway for a moment, would you? Pierre said, pointing along the gravel track a few paces in front of them. How much time would it take to get from here to its corner? Maka frowned. Maybe 30 seconds at a light pace. Why? Because, while you could measure the path in meters or feet or yards, time, although more variable, is also a measurement. Therefore, I believe Balya, or the undercurrent, and Earth are two planets in the same universe. I have long held that when I moved from one planet to this Earth, the time it would have taken to physically make that trip was added on. In essence, it seems to me that to get from Earth to Balya would be a trip of thousands of miles in length, or, if we were measuring it in years, thousands of does. Hence why time had moved so much when I arrived here. It's like if I suddenly teleported from this bench to the corner of the footpath without walking, but with 30 seconds of time still having passed. Maka laid the bag of chips she had still been picking from down on her lap, and rose a hand to her chin in contemplation of these admittedly somewhat advanced concepts, especially advanced for a woman from an age where the catapult or crossbow was still the pinnacle of technology. Her face had a habit of scrunching up slightly when in thought, her forehead wrinkled ever so minorly in a fashion Pierre couldn't help but think was a little cute. So, she said finally, breaking her ad hoc meditation on the matter, in order for me of my current age to be here, I would have arrived a couple of years before you did. Pierre nodded, but kindly a look overcame his face. Absent-mindedly he laid a hand atop Maka's silky white hair and ruffled it playfully. Good effort, though. I appreciate the thought you put in. I dare say a lot of people from this world wouldn't have understood half of what I just said. He finished with a surprisingly warm laugh and happy smile, which Maka reciprocated with a laugh of her own. All right, then, I have another question, she said, still smiling. This time Pierre didn't sigh or moan in protest. If anything, he seemed happy at the easy air of the conversation. Go on. In the book, one of your characters claims his middle name is Havler. That's the eldest child in his family is always given that name, based off some ancient hero, right? Pierre's smile broke a little as Maka continued. Now, obviously he can't be your direct descendant or anything, after all, thousands of years passing and all that. But what if he's really a distant relative of your sister's? I mean, when we first met, you said there was nothing left in the undercurrent to prove you or your family had ever existed. But with this, in your own book, is a character with your name. If it's true, that would make your well, a lot of greats, nephew, a great legacy, yes? My sister? Yes, my sister, my family. When did I last think about her? Writing the book, I guess, but, really think about her. What happened to her after I left? Did she leave a good life? Was she happy? How could I not think about something like that more seriously? How could I forget my own family? 2. Well, unless you just put it in there for fun, Maka continued to muse at Pierre's side. For fun? Pierre asked, his voice strained a little as his mind found itself preoccupied. Maka nodded. Yeah, I read on the internet, and don't say it again. I know you think the internet is haunted by degenerates, or something, but thus far it seems like a most amiable place. Anyhow, I read some writers like to project themselves onto their stories, or include characters based on themselves. How many years since you really thought about them? About your family? Remember how happy everyone was when Sis settled with that nice man? Not a soldier like me, liable to go off to war and never come back, but instead a good man who could protect his family and respect them. A stable blacksmith's job. Yes, a good man for a wonderful woman. They were expecting a child when I got transported to Earth, weren't they? A baby I never saw, a niece, or maybe a nephew. Father must have been so ecstatic to become a grandparent. Pierre continued to think to himself, barely registering what Mark had said. What? No, girl, I did not self-insert myself into my own book. What do you take me for? It is a historical archive of a scientific study for public consumption. I simply wrote what I saw, and the Havler mentioned could be anyone. The name was common enough. It could refer to someone who heroically saved a child from a burning building or cured a town of some deadly disease. I highly doubt it has anything to do with me, thank you very much, Pierre stated with an uncomfortable tone overcoming his voice. Maka's face became coloured with concern. Oh yes, I suppose that could be true. I didn't mean to offend your writing. It's just, what about the mention of the girl? Ha! More coincidences. That creature could have been one of thousands. It proves nothing, Pierre shot back, cutting off her sentence dismissively. Maka went to lay a hand on Pierre's forehead, worry plastered across her body language. Are you feeling okay? You almost sound like you don't want a legacy. A lurching feeling crept around Pierre's body, a sickening in his stomach, a dryness in his throat. His mind felt the familiar sensation of vertigo as his emotions began to swirl. It was as though Maka's talk of family had hit a trigger, a switch of repressed feelings and emotions, things he had dealt with, 30 years of pent-up regret and remorse. How easy is it to forget a face? I mean, if you don't see an old friend for 10 years, you might remember the standout moments, their name, maybe even their favourite foods, but their face, the subtle contortions of a smile on a happy occasion, the slight swelling of their expressions during a tear-filled funeral, the flush of their cheeks on a first date. How many years does it take to forget the face of your own damned sister, man? Pierre harshly slapped Maka's hand away from feeling his forehead. He glared into her hurt-filled eyes. What do you care how I feel, or whether I have a legacy or not? Pierre, I don't Who are you, woman? A ghost? A dream? The restless spirit of someone I wronged? What are you? Who are you? What right have you to turn up out of nowhere like this and pry into my so-called legacy? He spat. Maka laid her hands on her lap and sat up straight, trying for a calm demeanour as she spoke. I am the Lady Ardig, your friend, but it's okay if you don't want to call me that. We chose the name Maka together, remember? I like it a lot, okay? But no words seemed to reach Pierre now. All the confused emotions that boiled inside him seemed to focus on the young woman before him, a focal point for unwarranted anger. But you're not, are you? See, I started to think you were, started to believe maybe you were right. Maybe my memories were wrong, because that's the thing. Memories, dreams, they can all change, shift, be manipulated. What if I really had imagined a perfect woman in my head, with you as the actual, real version of the girl? But then I thought further, and just now it clicked. I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner. Yeah, please, calm down. No! It's your turn to be quiet and listen to me, you damn harlequin! Pierre half roared, loud enough for others in the park to turn and stare. Science! Science! My memories might all be wrong, but not the scientific facts of the matter. Why are your eyes not red? Maka's face seemed to freeze for a few moments, as though everything inside her had stopped for a couple seconds. See, there it is! Your hair is white and your skin fair, all because of your abilities. Magic you overused. But your eyes, they should be red. All magi gain a faint red tinting to their pupils, so faint you might not even see it. But you, before your hair goes white or your skin turns pale, your eyes always go fully red first. And yet, you, with your stupid white hair and your alabaster skin, have brown eyes. It's not my memories misremembering your eye colour, but that you are scientifically impossible. As his ramble ended, Pierre grabbed Maka harshly by the wrist, yanking her close to his face before using his other hand to hold open his own eyelid. Pierre, that hurts. Please, shut up! Look at my eye. Faint, so very faint because I had so little esperability. But it's there, eh? A faint red rim. It's been staring at me. The answer this whole time in every mirror and every dream. Red eyes. You do not have red eyes. Reluctantly, Maka nodded. You wouldn't see it without focusing, but around the rim of Pierre's eyes was the trace of red. And yet yours are completely brown. No messed up memories or imaginary bloody waifus. Just science. That you are not my Ardig. So then who the hell are you? Why did you appear in my home, sauntering around like you own the place, breaking my best armchair, wrecking my dining room, causing everyone on the street to start talking about Havelock's young mistress? Maka pulled her wrist free from Pierre's continued grasp, a faint red mark forming from the strength of his grip. She stood silently up from the small park bench. Pierre, you said once that some people like being alone. Is that what this is? Do you want me to leave you? I am not your plaything to tease and take advantage of. What I want is simple. "Tell me who you are," was all Pierre would say back. Maka turned her face aside, visible tears welling in her eyes, her bruised wrist clutched against her other hand, both pressed against her chest. I think I should go now. I'll be at the house, if it is still our house. I can find my own way back." And with that she began to walk away, not stopping to look back at Pierre. For his part, Pierre slumped back onto the bench, Maka's departure seemingly causing all the built-up rage to dissipate in an instant. He stared up at the sky, at ugly grey rain clouds forming on the horizon, and he evaluated his own sudden outburst, evaluating the feelings he thought he'd abandoned decades ago, evaluated the way he'd just spoken to Maka.